What happens if other conferences don't agree to the SEC and Big Ten's demands in the latest CFP talks? If we don't get a 14 or 16 team playoff with 4 auto bids for both of those conferences, could the Big Ten and SEC start their own playoff? Welcome in. This is Winning Cures Everything, where we talk college football year-round. I'm Gary. Today we're talking about the latest CFP discussions, the college football playoff, and what it could mean for the next iteration of that playoff starting in 2026. Also, what it could mean for the Big 12, the ACC, and the other conferences. Now, before we fire in, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and, of course, if you like the show, please tell your friends about it. If you want to interact with me, I'm on X at GaryWCE. Hit me up, and I will be sure to talk with you. All right. When expansion to 12 was announced, I said this on the show multiple times, that I believe that they were not going to stop there. Ohio State AD Gene Smith said in July of 2022, per Pete Thamel, that 16 just seems to be out there. You can't ignore it. Now, remember, this was just a few weeks after USC and UCLA announced they were joining the Big Ten, and an entire year before the Pac-12 imploded and Oregon and Washington joined as well. The 12-team playoff was announced and agreed to by ESPN, so there are dates on the calendar, and this thing is set up and ready to go, but only for the next 2 seasons. As of right now, there is still no TV contract for anything after the 2025 season, and if there's no TV deal, there's no playoff. The powers that be just agreed last week to adjust from the 6 auto bids for conference champs and 6 at-larges to now the 5-7 model. 5 auto bids, 7 at-larges. Of course, this is due to the implosion of the Pac-12. But before they could even get finished with all of that, talk began about moving from 12 teams to 14, basically eliminating the bias for the number 3 and number 4 seeds. So what prompted this? The Big Ten and the SEC have started throwing their weight around. The 2 biggest conferences understand that they, for all intents and purposes, control this sport. And while it's nice to have everyone else involved, Commissioners Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey are not going to let the other middling conferences have as big a stake or as much access to the playoff as they receive. 1 auto bid for each conference was not going to cut it because the ACC and Big 12, at least according to them, shouldn't be on a level playing field with the Power 2. Never mind the fact that those conferences would almost annually be assured of grabbing 6, maybe even all 7 of the at-large spots. Now, reportedly, the Big Ten and SEC want 4 auto bids each. So let's do the math. 4 plus 4 equals 8, plus 3 auto bids, 1 for the ACC, 1 for the Big 12, and 1 for the G5. We are now at 11 AQs, auto bids, which leaves 1 at-large for, a team like Notre Dame. Unless the SEC and Big Ten are just negotiating, and maybe they would be okay with 3 each, which leaves 3 at-larges. But if you bump it from 12 to 14 teams, well, now you're set, right? You've got 3 at-large bids. You've got a spot for the ACC, the Big 12, and the G5 champ, and then 4 auto bids each for the SEC and the Big 10. Unless, of course, the Big 12 and the ACC complain and push that they want 2 each to help solidify their conferences. So even at 14, you're back to just 1 at-large bid. 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12, and then 1 G5 is 13, and then you've got 1 at-large for Notre Dame or whoever else it might be. So to get all the Power 4 conferences what they want, we're going to have to go to 16, right? I mean, that means 3 at-larges after all the other AQ, automatic qualifier, auto bid mess, with 2 bids that might stabilize the ACC enough that they may not lose other schools after Florida State gets out. Of course, that is presuming that there are schools that value winning rather than pushing to join a conference so their paycheck goes up. But since we brought up paychecks, what about the CFP payouts? Are the SEC and Big Ten going to demand the most money? The answer to that is a pretty obvious yes, as they should. But is it going to be so overwhelmingly one-sided that the ACC and Big 12 refuse to comply? SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has spent years talking about wanting to do what's best for the entire sport, but we are reaching a point where what's best for the sport is so far in the rear view that you can barely see it anymore. Sankey is a highly respected figure in college football and in college athletics. And sometimes I think that people forget that his job is to put the presidents and chancellors of the SEC in the best position possible, not to necessarily win titles, but to make the most money from and for their athletics programs. So what's best for the sport? Probably just the 5+7 model. Like, everybody has access, and yes, I know not all G5 champs are going to have access, but the best of the G5 will. And the bigger conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, will probably take the majority of the 7 at-large bids. What I'm terrified of is the idea that they end up with nothing but AQs, nothing but auto bids, and it finds a way to keep the G5 almost completely out, or it completely overwhelms the other conferences to where we end up with potentially 2 separate playoffs. This is something that Greg Sankey has hinted at before, but one that's only the Big Ten and SEC, and another that's everybody else. Remember, the NCAA has nothing to do with the college football postseason. The CFP is completely separate from the NCAA, so there's no legislation that states that everybody has to have an opportunity. It's really a terrifying proposition, because I think something like that would eventually kill the sport. Not professionalism of the sport, but the complete separation of conferences, breaking it down into even more divisions, etc. Now, of course, there's also the idea that the Big Ten and SEC end up expanding to 20 teams each, which is why they're pushing for so many auto beds. The 2 biggest conferences may be the only ones that can afford to pay players as employees, which is why the ACC could be on shaky ground as far as realignment is concerned anyway. We'll see what ends up happening, and we'll likely see it soon, because Executive Commissioner of the CFP, Bill Hancock, said last week that they need to have everything done within a month in order to get the TV deal done. I imagine there's going to be clauses in the contract in case of any major changes, etc. But this is a wild time in the sport. Keep your fingers crossed and hope for the best. All right, let's get out of here. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and if you like what you heard, share it out with your friends. Don't forget to catch the Drive-In podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version on any of your favorite podcast apps, or you can become a member here at YouTube for $2.99 a month to watch it. The goal is at least 2 a week. Most weeks I'm going to be doing 3 podcasts. On that show, anything goes, so hit me up on Twitter at GaryWCE and tell me what you want to hear about. With that said, let's go. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. God bless college football, and hopefully all your tickets cash this week. Thanks for listening to Winning Cures Everything. Make sure and follow me on Twitter at GaryWCE. If you want to toss in a question, you can email me, Gary@winningcureseverything.com. Make sure and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.